Started.
That'll do it.
Hey guys, I'm Phoenix Gray, and I am here with Troy Osgood, author of the Sky Realms Online series, and we are going to be doing a Q&A for about an hour. We're just going to be hanging out, answering questions, and kind of just shooting the breeze. So anyhow, let's go ahead and get started. So tell everybody a little bit about your series, Troy.
Well, Sky Realms Online is basically a trapped in the game kind of series. The main character Hall was in the middle of a raid, and then there's a big glitch, which to him appeared as lag. Next thing he knows, he's back in a starting town as level one, where he had been maxed out before. And they kind of come to find out that there's a huge glitch in the game, and nobody's quite sure what exactly happened, and a bunch of players got trapped. And it's a couple years after when they had been playing, so they were kind of in suspended animation for a while now. The game has started up again, and the developers basically has decided that we can't get these guys back in their bodies, so we're going to let them live in the game world. And it kind of goes on from there, and it starts off fairly slice of life, just Hall and his new friends trying to survive and live in the world. And it's now that book four is out, there's a little bit more that's the main story is kind of hidden, and that they find out there's a little bit more going on than they thought, and the game is kind of evolving as time goes on.
Awesome. How long are you planning the series to be?
Well, I originally had something planned like 20 books and a bunch of spin-offs and all that stuff, but
Wow.
I've kind of trimmed it down to it's going to be nine. Sky Realms is going to be 9 books and 2 short story anthologies of just some I get these comments all the time because I tried an experiment between the first and second book to kind of make some time pass between the books.
Hmm.
So it didn't book one didn't end and book two immediately started up. I wanted it to be a couple weeks later, but I didn't want them to stand around doing nothing. So I kind of wrote a little short story that kind of fills in the gaps that I always planned on doing in like an anthology.
Hmm.
So I keep getting comments all the time. It's like, "Where's this story?" I'm like, it's coming. It'll be there eventually.
Oh, the 20 books sounds like a great number. What made you
Yeah.
what's making you cut
Um.
it down?
There's the old thing about the sales not being as good. I mean, it's doing great, but it wasn't as it's not 20 books worth doing great, if that makes sense. And I got a
Yeah.
lot more stories that I want to tell. So originally had my plan was that every book would be a level, and he was going to get up to level 20 before the end game of the series. But I'm like, I'm going to shorten it up a little bit, make it a little bit more. A lot of that 20 books would be not necessarily filler, but it wouldn't be as exciting just because having to get those levels would mean a lot of the main story thrusts wouldn't be there. There'd be a lot more just side quest stuff. So I decided just to kind of trim it down and then end it at 9 books, and then I can go in and do a bunch of the other stuff that I want because I just keep coming up with new ideas all the time. They don't stop.
Yeah, I feel you. I actually shortened the next book in my series. It's probably going to be coming out in September. Because I also had like kind of a lot of, I don't want to say side questy things,
Yeah,
but one of the comments that I got a lot on my last book 6 was that it just kind of wasn't tight enough. That it seemed to be like a lot of filler.
yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to like tighten up my writing.
I think that
Uh,
happens with a lot of us when a lot of people that get into lit RPG and stuff. It's their first books they've written, and you get into it with like this grand idea, and then as you start developing it, then you're like, okay, well, I can kind of pull that back and make it a better by making it shorter.
Yeah, for me, my last one is called Neverending Dungeon, and he goes into this dungeon, and it's a excessively long dungeon, as the name implies, and so I was really just trying to make a few points, and I think I kind of drug it out a little bit too
Yeah,
long trying to make those points, so
yeah, I
I
haven't
ended
gotten
up.
to that one yet. I was waiting for the audible to come on 4 or 5. I can't remember which one of it was. Behind on for your
Yeah,
series.
5 just came out on
Yeah.
Audible, and I have no idea when 6 is coming out. I'm
Must be,
kind of.
yeah, it's 5 I was waiting for.
Yeah, I was kind of waiting to see when if Tantor is going to pick up book 6 yet, so it's kind of a waiting game to see when that's going to come out.
Yeah.
But so the first question of the day: when did you first learn about lit RPG, and how did you learn about it?
So I published my first book in 2016. It was a straight fantasy, and it's called the Skeleton Stone. And that was kind of, I still was behind the idea of making these huge epics, and that one was gonna be like this open-ended series with all sorts of little things and going on, and I had no idea what I was doing. So it then nothing happened with that book, and then I did the second one because it was one of those things where the first book comes out, everybody's got all these grand ideas. I'm gonna be this best-selling writer, and I'm gonna be quit my day job, and then reality hits in that it's a lot harder than you think to get there. So my
Yeah.
second book was a struggle, and as I was writing that, I started hearing more and more about this genre lit RPG, and started looking into it at that point. So that would have been probably 2018ish, around there. So I started reading up into it. I'm like, hey, this is kind of cool. This kind of hits some of my stuff that I like. Because originally when everybody writes forever. It just takes, you got to get to that certain point where you take all the ideas and all this, notebooks and notebooks of stuff that never goes anywhere. And finally you get somewhere that actually gets somewhere. And once you get over that first hump, you can start getting more and more. So when World of Warcraft first came out, years and years and years, and I'm dating myself, making myself old, because I started playing that with the beta when that first came out. I had the idea of writing stories based on the adventures of my guild, following the crest lines and kind of writing those stories. So when I started hearing about lit RPG, that kind of came back to my mind. I'm like, hey, this is kind of what I wanted to be doing, but I hadn't thought about involving the stats. And I'm like, this is kind of a nice, neat little twist to fantasy. So then that's where Greyhold came from.
Oh, that's cool. That's super cool. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people take inspiration from video games,
Yeah,
which I definitely did, and D&D. I hear a lot of D&D campaigns. A lot of people
yeah,
homebrew and take from there too,
yeah.
as well. So how did you come up with the concept of your series? I guess you kind of already explained that a little bit, but could you get into a little bit more?
I'm not quite sure where Hancock the world came from. The idea of the floating islands. That I'm not sure what led to that and where that popped up. I was probably watching some like steampunk or something like that, or reading some steampunk where the airships and that kind of the idea of all these little islands floating everywhere and having to get to them came through. But the classes and all that stuff mostly came from World of Warcraft and Ultima Online. And I'm going to be dating myself again because I started playing that back in 2000, I want to say. So then actually, Hall, the name of my main character in Skyrim, was the first character I ever played in multi MMORPGs. It was my very first character in Ultima Online was named Hall. He didn't use a
Oh,
spear though. He was a mace wielder for my first day, and I met some people that told me I was being stupid for using a mace. So then they turned me into a swordsman. But then the class came from mixed from Final Fantasy 11, the Dragoon, which was my favorite class I've ever played in a game, and the Warden from Lord of the Rings Online. So I kind of combined all those into the Skirmisher.
how is Lord of the Rings Online? Because I've never played it.
I wasn't too bad. I actually liked it. I just don't have any time to play games anymore. I'm not a big raid guild guy. I've never been a big raider. One, because I sucked as a tank during my guild when I was the tank in raids, and we never got anywhere, and it pissed everybody else off. But I liked cresting and going off and exploring the world, and Lord of the Rings was pretty good for that. So I kind of liked playing that one, but just don't have any time anymore.
Yeah, I'm definitely more of like a solo player when it comes to MMOs. I
Yep,
just play with my little small group of people,
yep.
which isn't very often, but mostly solo. Um, yeah, I think Final Fantasy 14 is getting ready to be free to play. Uh, I think it's actually free to play right now, and then on in August sometime they're updating because right now like some of the starter quests are like really long and boring, but they're getting ready to update to where they make that short. So I'm kind of excited about that. I'm
Yeah,
hoping
that's
I'm
the
gonna
thing I
get to
didn't
play.
like about Final Fantasy 11. So I played Ultima Online, then Final Fantasy 11 when that came out. I think it was 11. I don't know, it was so long ago. And then I kind of wore out on that one. So when World of Warcraft came out, I jumped full tilt into that one and played in the beta, and then played that one a lot for years. And I took a long break. But Final Fantasy, the grind in Final Fantasy was just too much. You had to party up. You couldn't level without being in a party, and I just did not like that.
I definitely feel like once if you want like because in Final Fantasy 14, I don't know how 11 was because I never played it, but you get a lot of you pretty much get access to like all of the classes, but
Yep.
leveling them up is
It's a pain in
definitely
the
a
ass. Yeah.
grind. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
it's
pretty.
for 11 was the same thing. You'd have to do the crests to get access to some of the classes, and those crests you had to have like basically like a high level player kind of escort you through, otherwise you wouldn't be able to get do it. And yeah, you could play every crest or every class, but just getting the leveling up was just forever. You sit there in town, look with a little looking for group tag up
Yeah.
and shouting, "Hello, I want to level, I want to join a party." If you want the
And
exact right mix, they wouldn't want you to play with
yeah, this is probably gonna date me, but that reminds me a lot of EverQuest. I remember
them.
doing that in EverQuest, sitting
I never played
being like,
EverQuest for whatever reason. That was
oh,
one I never got around to playing.
they called it Evercrack for a
Yep.
reason.
Yep.
Yeah, it was, but yeah, it was kind of the same thing. I remember just being like, man, I hope some high level person comes around to
Hmm.
power level me because once you got to a certain point, and it wasn't even that far in the game, but once you got to a certain point, you could not
Yep.
progress unless you had other people with you.
And yeah, and all the zones are so high level you couldn't go into any of them without having a big party with you. And it would all this. It was annoying me because all the zones were all the everybody farmed them all because there was only certain zones you could go into to get the right mobs to come and level you. So there'd be like 1,000 people there for 5 mobs, and then you obviously hear
Yeah.
like train because some idiot had pulled 20 of them, and everybody would have to zone out. Otherwise, you'd all be killed, and then you'd
Yeah.
lose your experience. So yeah, I didn't last very long in that game. It
Yeah, that was like
was no fun.
that was like EverQuest. Any good place, there would already be like a group of people just like
Yeah,
camping it, and that you couldn't get in. You had to like wait. You had to wait for somebody to leave and just hope that you would be the chosen one that that group would take in to like help
yeah.
with
That's what I
that
liked about
area.
World of Warcraft and Lord of the Rings Online is there really wasn't any of that because all the dungeons were instance,
Hmm.
so you could get your own little group and then run in and you could level all the way to max solo.
Yeah,
Not even ever group up once, so it was nice. I did that one time on WoW. I never even grouped and did any of the dungeons. I just leveled all the way up to max solo.
that's what I did love about WoW when it came out. I was like, oh, this is perfect. I don't have to like wait for people or like fight to like get these resources or yeah.
Yeah.
But all right. So, who's your favorite character in your series and why?
Um. Well, my favorite's Hall because the main character because a lot of him is like based kind of what I think how I would react. He's a very practical person. He doesn't really kind of think too much about what happened. He worries about what's going on going forward. But then once he kind of makes a decision, he just kind of goes with it. And it doesn't really let too much emotion get in the way. So a lot of that's kind of what the way I deal with things. So a lot of Hall is me, and then I like Roxhod because who doesn't like a battle axe wielding dwarf who's really a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah, that's true. I love dwarves. So, who's your favorite character in someone else's lit RPG series and why?
Um, I like Devon from Stonehaven League just because she's so neurotic. But one of my favorites is Alexandria Duke from Game Makers Online, which is one of my favorite series. It's just something that one of the series that doesn't really get as much attention as I think it should, because it's a kind of an odd one because it takes place in the author's urban fantasy world, so everybody can use magic outside of the game. So they have this
That's
game that
kind of
they yeah they have this game that they she goes into. It's in Game Makers Hall, which is part of the 100 halls. So it's like a school magic school, but they are using a game to kind of learn magic. So she goes into it not knowing too much, and she gets a very underpowered class and has to kind of outthink her way through everything. So it's kind of different, and I like reading about that a little. So the overpowered MCs that we usually get.
yeah. That sounds unique. I definitely haven't heard that used before. But yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I'll have to check that out. I haven't heard of that one yet.
Yeah, it's only I think you've just put out the last book, only 5 books, so it's a nice one you can get through. None of these ever never ending ones that we always do tend to get or do.
Yeah. So, when you write about food in your books, does it make you want to eat or
Mhm.
drink?
I don't get too descriptive about food. I don't even think I've really described it too much. I think they just ate food. I'm not very exciting when it comes to food, and it drives my wife crazy. I like things simple. I'll just take a steak and I could eat a steak every day and be happy, pizza every day and be happy. So I don't get too descriptive about food because food is not one of those things that really excites me all that much.
Hey, to each their own. Yeah,
Yeah,
I definitely don't write anything like there's no special recipes or anything,
yeah. No. My
but
wife
and
calls it boring. It drives her crazy.
so I like cooking a lot of like kind of weird stuff. But yeah, it doesn't really make it into my books because I'm just like this is a fantasy world. They don't really have like a whole lot of super
Yeah,
fancy dishes. It's kind of just like survival of the
yeah. I
fittest.
like the
But
down and the grittier fantasy worlds.
mm,
That's kind of like your own Patrine is kind of really not low fantasy, but it's not the nice and flowery and bright fantasy. A
yeah,
little dirtier, which is what I kind of like.
yeah, I definitely like things a little bit on the darker
Yeah.
side. So, is there any skill in your books that your characters have that you'd like to learn?
Uh, I kind of wouldn't mind learning leap. That'd be kind of cool. Just be able to jump all over the place and just get up, you know, jump. If somebody's coming at you, just jump over them or jump up onto the roof of the house instead of having to climb up ladders to get the snow off. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, then you wouldn't have that big of a fear of falling either, I would assume.
Yeah, I don't have a fear of falling. I don't. Heights don't bother me. It's just climbing up the ladder that bothers me. Because then I'm not on my own 2 feet. If I'm on my own 2 feet, I'm fine. If I got to rely on
Yeah,
something else, then not so good.
that actually reminds me that I found out that my aunt was climbing a ladder and she fell off of it and broke her leg this past
Eesh.
week. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's always ladders scary. I have a fear of heights, so
Yeah.
ladders
I used
are
to, when I
pretty
was a
much a
kid,
no
I
for me.
worked at a movie theater and I had to change the marquee sign out front. And, it was this like 20-foot long sign with like letters about this high. You had to put the entire movie title in the letters, and they snapped onto little rails. So the ground was uneven, and you'd be on this ladder that was kind of tilted like this, trying to reach all the way over here to snap a letter into place. So it wasn't very fun.
Yeah, that sounds horrible. I used to work at a gas station, but they had like this super long pole to change the stuff.
Yeah,
But
we
that
didn't get that.
again, that dates me because now all gas station things are electronic. But back then, yeah, it was the pop the number into place thing.
Yep.
But hey, Brandon. Hey, Nate. All right. Is there okay? So your main character is taken from you, is kind of based on you. But is there anything else in your books taken from your own personal experience?
Um, Not really. Kind of just kind of created the world and let the characters kind of decide what they're doing in it. So
But
I don't
definitely,
live. What's that?
I was gonna say, but definitely some stuff from your game, your
Yeah,
gaming time.
yeah. I take a little bit from the Ultima Online and World of Warcraft. Kind of throw that in. I try to be very descriptive and unique with the cities and the environments because that's kind of one of the things you always find in the games is they kind of go beyond what you could do in even in fantasy world in reality. You try to get something very different and unique for a city and temples and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of fun to coming up with that ideas.
Yeah, I've got to say pretty much the same in regards to not taking a whole lot from my life. I think the only thing that I really took was in the very first book when Azure learns archery. Um, that was pretty much the only thing I actually had to add to the book without a whole lot of research going into it. Um, hey, Charlene. So let's see. What's the most bizarre thing from one of your books?
That's a tough one. I can't really think of anything really that bizarre. It's pretty. Yeah. I can't really think of anything all that bizarre.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird, like almost on the spot question. Mine, I would say mine's not like super. I can't think of anything super bizarre yet either, but definitely in the future I have some
I think I
things
came up with
planned.
something today when I was tonight when I was watching some cartoon with my girls before they went to bed. They were watching some strange cartoon. I didn't even know what it was, but there was some bug there that I'm just looking at going, that would make an awesome monster. So I came up with a dire beetle when I was watching the cartoons with my girls.
Nice. Yeah, it's I have like the worst memory. If I don't think of something right away and like write it down, I forget it. But when you said that, I was just like, I'm pretty sure I did not watching a cartoon, but I'm pretty sure I came up with the monster like a day or two ago, and now I've already pretty much forgotten what it was going to be. But
I hate when that happens.
yeah, I really have to. If I don't write it down, it's gone like instantly, pretty much.
Yeah, the way I figure is like if I come up with something and I can't remember it when it comes time to write it down, then it really wasn't that important anyways. It wasn't worth it because if it's something that is worth putting in the books, it will come back to me.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to look at it. I don't know. I feel like I've forgotten some really important stuff, even stuff that I should know for like the series I'm writing now. I'm just like, sometimes I catch things in editing and I'm like,
Yep.
holy, I totally forgot to even like put this thing in that actually needed to be here.
Yeah, I got a
Um,
comment from my publisher one day when one of the books came out. He's like, "I thought there was 25 people in the city." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "Yeah, you said there's 25." I'm like, "No, there's 27." I had some numbers mixed up, and I actually had to go through back to all the books and make sure I was counting everybody right. He was right.
that,
I was wrong.
so have you ever had to? I guess this is it's an off question, but it's a good one. Um, well, actually, let's answer a question from JS first. What has been your favorite monster to write about?
I was gonna. I'd have to say the all the demons that showed up in book 4 in Greenfire. Those were all pretty fun. I just tried to come up with something kind of strange and unique. There was stone teals, which like some kind of earth elemental that just big chunks of rock put together, and they could shoot out little pieces of themselves. And yeah, there is the demons in Greenfire were the funnest. But the Diabeto is going to probably be the funnest, and he's going to make an appearance in book 5.
Nice. For me, I think it would probably be the lesser demon that appears in books 1 and 2, and I think it's probably because it's the one enemy I spent the most time on, even though he didn't really get a
Yeah,
whole lot of screen time. But it's definitely one of the more complex enemies with
yeah,
the manipulation that goes on.
yeah. Actually, I got to go back in Greenfire. I had to go grab this guy. The orcs, or the Desmeric as they're called. Oh, what did I just drop? Are
Oh
probably my
no!
favorite because they're based off of this guy right here, which is an action figure made by some friends of mine from a company called Boss Fight. So I've been waiting years, literally since 2014, to use this guy in a book. I just finally was able to do that, and now I just lost his spell book somewhere
Oh
down on the floor.
no!
Oh, there it is. Yeah,
When you
little
said
spell book.
boss, oh that's cute.
Yeah.
When you said boss fight, I instantly thought of the game Boss Monster for some reason. Have you ever played
No,
that?
no.
Yeah, it's
But
like
if
a
you
little
can
board card game
zoom in
type
on
thing.
this, so he's got a little fairy trapped in his cage, which is an important part of book 4. So,
Oh, that's
so
cool.
these guys were kind of fun just because it was a homage to some stuff created by some friends of mine. So I've been waiting a long time to use these.
Oh, that's super cool. So have you ever dreamed about your books? 'Cause we spend so much time writing, it seems like it would almost be a thing that would just creep into the subconscious at night.
I try not to, because I go lay down and I'm like, oh, if I do whatever do this, I'm like, no, I gotta sleep. So because usually don't go to bed until about midnight anyway, so I need to get my sleep before I get up in the morning because I don't get to sleep in anymore.
Yeah, surprisingly, I have never dreamed about my books. I don't think I've ever dreamed about any of my books that I've ever written, which is weird because I definitely dream about video games that I play. So I would think that we spend so much time writing these worlds, you would think we actually would think about them subconsciously, like they never quite go away.
Yeah, I think it's kind of nice to take the break, just
Yeah, I think
step away for a little bit. Yeah.
our brains probably need it. So, how do good reviews make you feel?
It keeps me going. Kind of, it's nice to hear that people like it and that they love it. And I just got a guy sent me a message, and there's a long paragraph of how much he loved the book, and I still amazes me that people like it that much and get that into it. So that's always great to hear. And there was another guy who was talking about in my readers group. He was saying something and mentioned something about magic weapons. Like, you know what? You just gave me the prologue for book 5. So that's always
Nice.
great to hear.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely always makes my day to get them, and it's yeah, interesting, especially interesting when somebody like talks about or quotes your books. And then I have a fan who is considering getting a tattoo with a quote for one of my books. That was pretty crazy,
Yeah.
like exciting stuff. Um, so how do on the opposite side, how do bad reviews make you feel?
For the most part, I ignore them because you kind of look at them, and if it's something that's obviously one of the trolls, you just kind of ignore it. But there's some every once in a while you can kind of look through, and I got a couple reviews from the earlier books about the slower leveling, so I kind of was able to take that into account and make some adjustments in book 4 to speed up the leveling, so that he kind of gets, which helps with going back from 20 books down to 9 books with one book per one level per book. That wouldn't have worked anymore since people don't like the pace of the leveling. So I had to
Oh yeah,
kind of pick it up a bit. So
yeah,
those kind of reviews are helpful. It's the ones that just come back and, oh, this sucks. Those, just ignore those.
yeah. They can definitely like kind of they ruin my day sometimes if they're like really bad.
Yeah.
But constructive criticism is good, especially like with this last book I
Mhm.
published. I got a lot of people were unhappy about it, but I was getting like not just reviews. I was getting emails. People were emailing me about it, so I knew some things needed to be changed. Um, are you Charlene asks, are you ever surprised at your fan base? Like, do you think, wow, a 55-year-old housewife likes this, or
Um,
things like that?
I haven't gotten any surprises from that so far. Everybody that seems to be into the books are the not the typical fans, but what would be expected for the demographic for the fans. So I haven't got any of this 55-year-old housewives yet. That'd be something to look forward to.
Yeah, sometimes I'm surprised by my fans. Like I have some super religious fans, which is surprises me because my books
Yeah.
I definitely curse a lot. There's a little bit of prostitution in some of the books. There's some very uh, things that I would not associate with super religious people. So it's that usually surprises me more than any like age or gender or anything like that. Um, but yeah, all my fans are super cool, and I loves them all for sure.
Yep.
So we kind of went through all the questions. If you guys have any more questions, go ahead and ask. So now we're pretty much just gonna hang out and chill for the next 30 minutes, and I'm just gonna pelt you with some questions of my own.
Go for
Um,
it.
so how long have you been full time, actually?
Not full time.
Oh, you're not
I
full
work.
time?
No, not yet. Hope, and I don't really envision it happening because,
Why not?
I'm 46 years old, so I'm getting close. I'm close enough to the retirement age that I'm not thinking, and I like my job, my full time job. I'm an architect, so I really love what I do.
Oh, that was cool.
So, and my feeling is if I can make enough selling the books to be equivalent to what I make at my full time job, doing it part time, why would I give up the full time job? You know,
Yeah,
because then
yeah,
I can basically my goal now is to pay for my kids' college, so that when they get old enough that they won't have to worry about it. That's my goal. So
yeah, there's definitely a lot of benefits to not going full time, and
yeah,
that you get insurance. I'm assuming you get insurance, which we do not get, at least
I get
for.
it through my wife, so I don't have to worry about
Okay,
that.
that's good because that's been like a big thing for me. Because for me to get health insurance to pay for it, even like a pretty crappy plan is like close to $400 a month, and
Yeah.
I'm like that's that's a whole lot of no.
Mhm.
Uh, Also, yeah, authors don't really get to retire, which is not something that's
Yeah.
talked about very much.
Yeah. So I'm
You
thinking
kind
maybe early retirement would be nice, but
Yeah,
the goal,
having the ability
yeah,
for sure.
the goal is to get my kids' college educations paid for, and then I can start thinking about the early retirement. And by the time
Yeah,
that's all done, I'd be probably close to retirement age anyway. So
yeah.
I got a little. I just got started into this a little late. So
Oh no, there's no such thing. As long as you're enjoying it,
yeah.
and 'cause for me, writing has always been a passion. It's always been what
Oh
I
yeah.
wanted to do. Um, but yeah, now I'm having to actually plan for retirement because it wasn't really a thing before. So I've been buying a ton of stocks and kind of diversifying my income portfolio because that's a little bit of a different thing that you have to do when you do this full time.
Yep.
Um, but how have you been handling the COVID situation, the quarantine, and all that?
We're doing pretty good. We're all, well, my wife is a teacher, so she was home. My work is I'm able to work from home for the most part. I actually haven't been into my office since end of March, I think, which is kind of nice. I kind of like working from home. But my two girls are home. They don't get the whole daddy's working from home thing. They're both young. They're 7 and 5, so they want summer vacation. I think since I'm home, I'm on summer vacation, and every day I'm like, honey, I have to work. I'm still working. Just because I'm home doesn't mean I'm not working. So they don't get that whole work from home thing yet. But it's great
Yeah,
being home and just being to see what they do during the day. So
yeah, I've heard that a lot from people that have kids. Uh, they're like, yeah, kids don't really, especially young kids, don't really
yeah,
understand the whole you actually have to work thing.
yeah. If my office was kind of like in the basement, I could kind of close myself off and they didn't see me. That would be different. But it's right off the living room, so every time they're coming downstairs and walking back and forth from the kitchen, they can see me in the office, and then I'm out getting lunch, and so I'm home. They see me home, and they think I should be off playing with them, which I would love to be doing, but I still have to work.
So, do you think that you're going to be working from home even after this, or do you think that you're going to have to be going back into the office?
I hope to be working from home going forward. We work
That'd be,
from we work remotely anyways. We've always had that capability, and they just had us in the office just to be in the office. But all my clients are all over the country, so I haven't worked with anybody within a driving distance in a couple of years. So I do all teleconferencing and PDFs for all my drawings and everything anyway. So there's really no need for me to go back into the office. And if my boss ends up looking at this, because he probably will, remember that I don't need to go back in the office.
yeah, I definitely think just the working world is going to be forever changed after this. I think a lot of
Yeah,
people are going to be able to start working from home permanently, and honestly, I think that's better for a lot of companies too because they
yeah.
get to save money on the.
The overhead for buildings is so costly. It's ridiculous how much that stuff costs for companies. And a lot of our work is doing a lot of office work. So we do some renovations for companies here and there. And yeah, it's just crazy how much that stuff just costs. If you don't have to do a building, you don't have to. But that would end up leaving a lot of empty buildings all over the place with no use, which is going to be another issue we'll have to deal with down the road. But we'll figure that
Yeah,
out.
yeah, it's kind of weird to think about just long-term implications no matter how things end up going. But what do you do in your free time right now?
Free time. What's that?
Yeah, I was like, you have kids, so you probably don't have any.
No, we like to hike. Go out hiking. We go kayaking. Um, lucky enough where we live that there's a bunch of hiking trails around, a lot of lakes. So we do a lot of swimming during the summer, a lot of kayaking and hiking, snowshoeing in the winter. Um, I like my craft beer, so me and the wife used to go hit the breweries all the time. We don't get to do that as much anymore, but
Yeah,
as
what's
the
your
girls
favorite?
get older, we should better get a little bit do that a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm hopefully they'll. Well, I mean, they can't really open everything up right now because it's still really bad. And
Mm.
opening things up are what got us into this
Yeah.
place where it's really bad. And
Yeah.
I definitely understand why they locked everything down because if you have been to a bar in the short time that they were opened, you quickly learn that people as soon as people get drunk, they do not social distance. They
Yeah.
forget that this even exists,
Yep.
which is pretty amazing what alcohol does.
Yeah, we've
Um,
lucked out up here in New Hampshire where I'm at that we haven't been hit that bad, so we're pretty lucky up here.
Yeah, I'm down here in Texas, and it's
I'm sorry.
yeah, it's pretty bad here. It's pretty bad. But so you said you like craft beer. Do you have a favorite?
I like white beers, Hefeweizens, Kolsch, Helles. I like a good Scotch ale now and then. I'm not an IPA fan. I'm
Oh,
over that craze. They can go away. And that kind of annoys me with all the breweries because it's huge up here. So all the breweries have like 5 or 6 different versions of IPAs, and I'm all set.
Yeah, no, it's the same down here. I drink stouts primarily when I
Yep.
go to craft beer bars, and there'll be like maybe like two stouts on the menu and like 10 IPAs. So
Yep.
yeah, I feel you. But I've never liked IPAs. We actually just tried home brewing for the first time, and we brewed an IPA. But uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
just
I
too
tried that
hoppy.
once, and they had a where was it I brewed? I think it was just a wheat ale I brewed. And it came out pretty good, and I just haven't had any time. I had another batch I was going to brew some white, and then one of my dogs got into the gluten that came in the package and ate it all up. So
Was
I
the
just had to
dog
replace it.
okay?
Oh yeah, she was fine. It just she was got pretty bloated and was pretty gassy for a while. But she was a chocolate lab, so she could eat anything.
Oh, yeah. We I don't know. We recorded our whole brewing thing, which I'm gonna post eventually on my personal page. But it is a process. It's a
Yep.
lot more of a process than I thought it was gonna be. And
I was kind of bored with it because you do all the cooking up front, and that takes a couple of hours, and you throw it into the carboy there, and then you let it sit for a while. And you go
yeah,
check out um, the specific density or whatever it is every once in a while. And then now you just kind of sit there and you watch it and you wait there, and then you have a couple of hours of putting it in bottles, and you get to drink it, which is good. But the rest of it was just kind of boring.
yeah. We only brewed like a gallon batch, and it took us. I mean, it took 2 months before this beer was ready, and
Yep.
we boiled off too much of the water. So we ended up with we were supposed to have 6 bottles of beer. We ended up with five, and I was just like, man, for the amount of time this took and the as much as it cost, I'd rather just go to the grocery
Yep.
store and like buy a full 6 pack. But
There's a company down maybe about half an hour from me that you can kind of go to their facility and do all that. So you do all the cooking and putting together the recipe, and then throw it in one of their cowboys or vats or whatever, and they take care of all that rest of it. And then you go back in a couple of weeks and kind of pick it up.
oh,
So
that's
I
nice
do
because
that. Yeah.
they probably keep you from screwing up too,
Yep.
which would be nice. Because yeah, I my boyfriend wants to do it again. We're gonna try because we did an IPA. I think we're gonna do like an ale next time or something. But I don't. I'm a little bit less enthusiastic about it than he is because yeah, it's a lot of cleaning and a lot of work
Oh yeah.
for not a lot. But I think we're eventually gonna upgrade to like 5 gallons.
Yeah. I think that's
But
what my thing was a 5 gallon, which makes a lot of beer.
yeah, everybody when I was reading online, everybody was recommending to do that because
Yep.
there were so many things that I was like, man, yeah, is this even going to be safe to drink? Because there's so little. We were supposed to get 12 beers and we only got five. But yeah, it turns out that it was fine. It was just we just messed up. But what's your favorite video game of all time?
Legends of Cage, which is an old game. Back, I'm again Um, dating myself. So it was played back in the '80s when they used to actually have things called arcades. So it was a quick game, which is probably why I liked it because I could actually finish it. But basically, you're a ninja whose girlfriend gets kidnapped by some demon monks, and you have to kind of go through the stages. So you go through everything 4 times for all the seasons before you can get to the final end. So you got to go through a forest, and this is probably where I came back, I got the like got my enjoyment of leaping and jumping for games because you basically jump up the trees, and I mean the guy jumped to the top of the trees and 5 trees over and then down, and you're fighting ninjas as you're going through and fire breathing monks. Then you get through that and you go through a tunnel with ninjas jumping out of water at you. Then you have to climb up the wall to get to the temple. Then you're on the stairs, find the boss, get your girlfriend back, and then she gets kidnapped again. And you do
Of
that three or
course,
four times. So that
of
was probably
course.
one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, that's definitely like always a thing. It's like these women they don't know how to not get kidnapped.
You're right.
They're just like wandering out into like the worst neighborhood in these
Yeah.
fantasy like
This was
realms.
in
Like,
the '80s
hey.
where that was the common thing.
Oh yeah, no, I
Like
know. It
the
was like
damsel in distress was the true damsel in distress, and that was
yeah, it was every day. I think about like all the Mario games. Like your princess is in
yeah, it's
another
another
castle.
castle.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh man, that's great. So, Brandon asked how many books you have planned for the series. We did talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit earlier.
There'll be
And
9 books and then 2 anthologies. And the anthologies are actually going to be so the first one right now has the 1.5 book that takes place between book 1 and book 2 is like, I think like 12,000 words. And then the one between book 2 and 3 is like another 12. And then there's going to be a 60,000 word story of a new character that's not related to Hall. So it's going to be her adventures from basically day one up to kind of coinciding alongside Hall, and she'll have so it's about six. She's going to be about 60 to 70,000 words for her story in the first anthology, and there'll be another one of that size in the second. And the other stories are going to be there's a couple of, I call them like the first day. So it's kind of like the first time Hall's ever been in the game. So you actually get to see him in the real world of who he is before he started playing the game, and it's his first day ever playing Sky Realms. So there'll be one for him. There's one for Karen, and her first day is a little bit different from everybody else's because her first day in the game was the day that the glitch happened. So she
no,
actually, unlike everybody else, she never actually kind of got to log out. She started playing the game, and then the glitch happened, and she continued on from the point where she was before. So hers is a little bit different from everybody else. And there'll be a couple more of those in the second anthology, and I'm not sure if I'm going to throw in another new character or two, or introduce them in another way. And I think after it's all said and done, when because I know how the story, I know how the series ends. I know basically the last words that are said in it, and I know what the epilogue, and I know how this so basically there's two endings: the actual ending, and then there'll be the epilogue. And I know how both of those go and what the last words in the series are. And I'm trying not to give away any spoilers, but things
kind
are
of
gonna be
hard.
different. Yeah, things are gonna be different when at the end of book 9. So whether I go back and revisit it or not is going to be a kind of a completely different kind of story at that point. So just kind of leave it at that. But I can always come back and kind of pick up kind of in between stuff. So there's lots of spaces that hasn't even been explored yet. So that'd be fun to get into.
Yeah. Yeah, thinking of mine, all I can say is things are gonna get dark. They're gonna get dark and gritty because they tend to do that.
It's
Poor
always hard
Azure.
to kind of talk about the future because you don't want to get too spoily
Yeah.
and give up too much because you
Uh,
want to get the surprises coming.
yeah, I definitely feel like fans of my series already know that Azure gets screwed over a lot, and there's
Yeah,
more
he
of that
does.
to look forward to in the future.
I feel bad
Poor
for him sometimes.
Yeah, he really like he needs to be boosting that luck stat. He's just it's just not high enough for him. But yeah, I also have my full series planned out. There's going to be 2 spin-off series, which I don't want to talk about too much because that might spoileries for this series. But yeah, and then of course I'm working on the role-playing game,
Yeah.
and I'm probably eventually going to do a board game too. So I'm hoping that this series is going to span the entirety of the rest of my career because yeah, I really don't want to move away to anything else. But
Yeah.
definitely the last spinoff that I'm gonna do is gonna be pretty wild comparatively to how the series is now. So that one will be interesting and quite a bit different. But that is many
Yeah.
years down the road. So I probably shouldn't even be thinking about it too much right now.
Yeah, I had ideas to do a bunch of spin-offs, like the girl that's in the anthology that has her own story. The new one was originally planned as a spin-off series, and you actually can read the first couple of chapters on my Patreon page that involve her. So I'm posting her first chapters until the anthology comes along up there, and then after that, I'm going to start a new series on the Patreon page. So I got to get that written. So right now I have Skyrim's online. I just handed in a. It's actually no, it's actually out of the edits. We're kind of waiting for the to get a narrator for it. So when my publishers at Athon Books, I co-wrote a series with one of them for a gamelet series. So that first book is done. And we're waiting for the to find a narrator for that to get it recorded before that will come out. That's going to be a 3-book series. And then I just finished up the first book in a new series called Battlegrounds Online that I have to do my last read through before I hand it off to the editor. So that should come out at some point this year as well. And that's kind of a lit FPS or a lit RPG for a first person shooter.
Oh, okay.
So that should be out this year. And then I'll have the new series on Patreon. And I got two other things I'm working on in between. So there's one of the other reasons why I wanted to pull Skyrims down is I had so much other stuff I wanted to get to.
Yeah.
It just never ends.
Well, when we finish this, give me your link to Patreon, and I'll go ahead and send that out too.
Yep.
So because I noticed you boxed the first 3 books in
Yep.
your series, or the publisher
Mhm.
did. How is that working? Because I've been thinking about boxing,
It's
but I
doing very well. It picked up the sales have been kind of dragging because, book 4 just came out. So, the 30, 60 day, 30, 60, 90 drop offs. And book 1 has always maintained pretty well. 2 and 3 had dropped. And my stuff does very well in audio. So the box set has been doing great in audio, doing really, really well in audio. And it's still pretty good in ebook, and it's doing very well in Kindle Unlimited. So it kind of gave a nice boost to the first 3 books. So we'll do another box, probably do another box set after book 6, and then the 3rd box set after book 9.
So is your publisher handling your audiobooks?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yep, they do all of it. The first ever audiobook I ever listened to was Eden's Gate Online, the first book, because that's where Pavi, my narrator, had done that book. So I wanted to get an idea of how he was. So I had never done an audiobook before then. But then they're going to be able to put in audio. I kind of got to see what it's going to be like. So I listened to that. That was the first audiobook I'd ever listened to. And I only listened to it just because I wanted to hear what the narrator is going to be like.
Yeah, their sales of them are definitely on the rise.
Yeah.
They're turning into a really big thing now, so it's definitely good that you're getting your series on audio.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So do you think in our lifetime that we will ever see the kind of like VR immersion that we write about in our books?
Probably not my lifetime. Or if they do, it'll be like 90. So I won't be able to get to enjoy it. But it's coming. I think it will come and happen at some point.
I don't think it's going to be in my lifetime either. I think that's going to be past me. Have you used any of the VR headsets that are on the
I have
market right
not.
now?
No. I'm
They're
kind of funny. I write about a high technology kind of fantasy, but I'm really not that into that much technology. I got an iPhone 11 because I had no choice. I had like a 6 before that, and it died, so I had no choice but to get the new phone. Other than that, and I don't even use it as far as capability. I I like technology. I just don't use it very much.
Yeah, I admittedly don't. We have a VR headset, but I don't really use it that much because when you put it on, it's actually like pretty cool, but it's not quite what I want it to be.
Right.
So and it makes me sick. I get like really sick from not all VR, but most VR will make me sick because I get vertigo really bad just
Yep.
anyway. So the technology is just not quite there for me yet.
No, it's coming. I think it's one of those things. It's not going to be a quick quick arrival kind of thing. It's going to little steps here and there, and it'll get better every time.
So on the same little bit about technology, how do you feel about self-driving cars? Do you
No,
trust them? No?
no. I like driving, so I'm always going to like driving, and I just don't trust them. I just don't
Yeah.
trust that at all.
I used to like I'm not gonna say I ever loved driving, but I used to drive a lot, and now I just want something to drive me around.
No, it goes back to like not trust, like the whole ladder thing. Where if I'm at the top of a steep roof, I can stand on the edge, look down, not worry about it. But if I'm on a ladder, that's a different
Mhm.
story. If I'm behind the wheel, I can trust. I trust myself to react to everybody else around me. I don't trust them to react. And I don't definitely would not trust in a self-driving car.
So that actually kind of like brings into a good seg question. How do you feel about flying then?
I love flying.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, I hate
it's
it.
just
I hate
kind
it
of
so
odd,
much.
but because of the whole out of control, and I don't have control of it, but I just kind of zone out when I'm flying. So I just got my Kindle and I just read, and next thing I know, the flight's over. I fly a lot for work anyway, so
Well, yeah, I imagine you would. I think if you do it a lot, you probably get used to it a lot easier. But
Yep.
with my vertigo combined with my intense fear of heights and getting on a plane is almost guarantees I'm going to have a panic attack. So I feel bad for anybody sitting next to me because I've flown. I'd say at least half the times I've flown alone. But usually there's some nice soul next to me that's like, it's gonna be
Yeah.
okay. As I sit there, like just like clearly like freaking out inside myself.
That's actually one of the reasons why I stopped reading physical books and just do all ebooks now. Is because when I fly, I could get through like in one flight, I can get through an entire book or a book and a half. So I got tired of my carry-on bag being nothing but books. So now I got it to my tablet, so it's a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely ebooks make it really convenient. I've started listening to a lot of audiobooks too because
Yeah.
I walk like about 3.5 miles in the morning every morning, so I've been listening to audiobooks. But
Yeah, I haven't been able to since I've been working from home, but when I was at the office, I could listen to an audiobook and get through two of those, usually about two of those a week. Now I'm down to maybe one every 3 weeks just because I just don't get as much of a chance to listen to them straight out. But I usually try to have an audiobook and a regular book going.
yeah. So, do you play any like tabletop role playing games like D&D
Not in
or
a long time.
a long
I've loved
time?
them, and this is, it's one of those things I was never able to find anybody to play with. But I've always loved them, and I've always had all the books, and always been reading through the rule books and all that kind of stuff. And I got a huge stack of them over my bookcase over in the corner here. There's books I've never even read through, but I just got all the all the fifth edition supplements and setting books and all that stuff. And I was backing a bunch on Kickstarter because like you're doing your game, your tabletop game, and when I first wrote my series in 2016, that was the idea behind it, was to convert it into a game as well. So I started trying to develop some rules as I was going along, and I've just been completely changed what that whole series is going to be about. So maybe someday I'll get some kind of game out there, but
Yeah, I would definitely say with me writing the game, the stats are not quite the same as
yeah,
they are in the book, and writing a world for a lit RPG and making a game are two, I would say, two completely different
yeah.
beasts for sure.
Well, that's my problem when my other series trying to come up with game rules was because I grew up on the Dragonlance books and the Forgotten Realms books when those novels were out in the pen and paper settings, and I knew I had all the game rules and I had the books, and like they don't align because the books were not. There's a question somebody came up with about the Dritz books in one of the lit RPG groups. It's like, oh, is this lit RPG? No, even though it's based on Dungeons and Dragons, which is the game rules don't apply to the stories and to the novels. And that kind of
Mm,
always kind of bothered me. They're just fantasy novels. They exist in the game, in the world that the game is made of, but it's without the game rules. So that always kind of bothered me. So when I was writing mine and coming up with the game rules, my OCD was making them so they had to align.
yeah.
What they could do in the books, you had to be doing the rules, and I just couldn't get it to work together. So that was another frustration I had with that series, and why that I even just unpublished those books. The Amazon never takes the paperbacks down, so they're still out there lingering, which I wish they would just disappear. Because I
Yeah.
do plan on coming back with the first book, adding a bunch to it and changing some stuff up. I was hoping to do that this year, but it's probably not going to happen. It'll probably be next year.
So that actually brings another good question. Have you ever kind of written yourself into a corner? Like you wanted something to happen and your characters kind of took it a different way, or you're trying to accomplish something that maybe went outside the parameters of what your stats were, so it's like really frustrating to make
Yeah.
these things happen.
Oh yeah. With the second book in that first series, which was called the Orc Plains, that happened, and that book took me like 2 years to force out, and I literally had to force it out, and I published it, and it was one of those. I hate this book. This book has to go out though because I can't. It has to. I cannot keep playing around with this. It has to get out there. And as soon as I put it out there, hated having it out there. But I wrote like 80,000 words in it, and then scrapped like 50,000 of that and started over.
Wow, that is a lot of words to scrap. I think the
Yeah.
most I've ever scrapped was like 10,000, and I like cried a river afterwards because to me 10,000 words is a lot of words.
Which is
So
now with this Skyrim series, I don't think I've ever scrapped anything. I pretty much just do the first draft, take it, wait a couple of days, kind of read through it to clean it up, and I end up adding. I don't have a word to take away, and then ship it off to the editor, and goes off from there.
Yeah, it's pretty rare that I actually add anything like big, like paragraphs
Yeah.
or pages or anything. Usually when I go into like self-edit mode, things tend to get stripped because my characters can get a little bit too emotional or whatever.
I'm sure there's probably a lot of stuff I could strip out, but it works as it is. So
Yeah. So let me see. Do you watch anime at all?
not in a long time. I have not watched TV in about 3 years now, which is when my girls are actually adopted. Me and my wife adopted them. Uh, their 1 year anniversary was April 30th. So we adopted them just about a year and a couple months ago, and they were foster kids. So they've been with us for 3 years now, and I have not
Oh.
watched any TV and adult TV in 3 years.
Nice.
Because
Sounds
pretty
about
much,
right.
yeah, pretty much once they go to bed, I I hang out with the wife and read for a bit, and then she goes to bed, and that's when I have my writing time. So that's when I kind of lock myself in my office and just write.
Yeah, busy life. Busy
Yep.
life sounds like. So when you were able to watch TV, what were your a few of your favorite shows?
Well, we liked Supernatural. We watched Vikings. All the CW DC shows like Arrow, Flash, all that kind of stuff. Anything superhero we watched. A lot of the sci-fi stuff. That kind of stuff.
I heard Vikings was pretty good. I
It
never
was.
watched it though.
That one you had to really pay a lot of attention because they did a lot of time jumps, and they wouldn't tell you it was a time jump, and they do it like in the middle of a season. So
Oh,
next thing you know, they come back, and all of a sudden the kids are now adults. So it
that
took a
just
little bit. Like,
gives
wait, what happened?
yeah, that just gives me the Witcher flashbacks, which for anybody who's watching this, I will say I did not like the show. Hate me all you want, but I did not like it.
I haven't got to see any of the episodes of the show. I read the first book, The Last Wish, and I will go back and read the rest of them. I just haven't gotten around to it. The books to read was like this long, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger.
I think as long as you've read like one of the books, you should be okay.
Yeah,
My issue was I didn't read any of the books. I didn't play any of the games. I own all the games, but I haven't played any of them. And when you go in, they don't really explain anything. So I felt like it was very much they were just kind of like expecting you to know what was
yeah,
going on. And yeah, I had no clue, and so there wasn't a whole lot of character development either. I think they just developed pretty much like this main chick who was like a sorcerer or something, but
yeah.
otherwise none of the characters were very well fleshed out to me. To me. But yeah, that is my 2 cents on that. Um let's see, what else can I ask you? Do you have any questions for me?
um, what got you into lit RPG? Because I know from conversations throughout the various groups you started out in other genres before you went into this one.
Yes. Um, I started out in erotica. Well, actually, no. I started out in young adult horror. Was the first thing I ever published on Kindle, and there's just not really an audience for that. Um, and then after that, I actually wrote a gamelet. A zombie gamelet was the second thing that I published, but back before I even knew what gamelet was. Um, and that didn't do too well either. But yeah, then I wrote erotica for a while, and then I switched to romance, and I've spent the majority of my career writing romance, but I never had a passion for writing romance. Like, I don't watch chick flicks, I don't read romance books or anything like that for pleasure. So I was actually super happy that I was able to move into lit RPG because I do love fantasy and I like video games and I can actually write this and be like happy. I don't have to. So when I wrote erotica, of course, you're embarrassed to tell anybody you
Right?
write erotica. Like I imagine the harem lit guys probably feel a little bit the same. It's like, what do you write? You're like harem lit. It's like you kind of don't want to admit that to like family and friends, even if
Yeah.
you're making a lot of money. It's kind of like, uh, but uh, but yeah, and then romance and everybody's like, "Oh, have you read this? And have you read that?" And I'm like, I don't really enjoy romance. I just write it because well, because it made money. If I'm being bluntly
Yep.
honest, because it made really good money for a while. But yeah, I burnt out pretty quickly writing it, even though I was good at it. So that's why I want this to be like the rest of my career, because I love it, and so I'm just like holding on to it. I'm like,
Yep.
please let me be able to write this series for forever, because I enjoy it so much.
Yeah. That's kind of where I have this whole sheet of like nine up to nine. Well, actually now it's up to like 12 lit RPG game lit series I want to do. You know, various levels are fleshed out, and there's a bunch of normal fantasy. So I'm like, okay, do I when do I start putting the fantasy in there, and do I just do all lit RPG, get all those out of there, and then do fantasy, or do I do a couple? You know, because I've got to figure out. I think I can do 3 series a year and maintain the pace that I have now. So, like, do I do all 3 lit RPG? Do I do 2 lit and 1 fantasy? So that's what I'm kind of playing around with, is finding that mix of the different genres.
I think now that you're established in lit RPG, it would be easier to swing into fantasy, because I
Yeah.
know if you start in fantasy, it's really hard to
Yep.
get noticed, because it is a competitive genre.
Yes, it is. It's
Um,
very.
yeah, the first book I actually tried to get published is what The Realm Between is based off of, and this was way before Kindle Unlimited existed.
Yeah.
And I sent it to like 20 publishers, and it got rejected by every single one of them. But it was also really bad timing, because when I finished it, as soon as I finished it, like the Lord of the Rings, the movies came out. So I'm like, all right, everybody's probably like submitting fantasy novels right now
Yep.
too. It's just like really bad timing. But but yeah, I'm glad we can self-publish now, and
Yeah.
even that there are like a bunch of the small publishers for lit RPG. That's good too. 'Cause, we can finally get our books out there, and there's not as much holding us back as there was prior to all this.
Yep. Yeah. That's one thing that's kind of surprised me, is the more I get into the the business side of publishing, is you always go into it the idea that the authors the big authors you see at Barnes and Nobles and the airports and all those things, the big five traditional, like, oh, they gotta be rolling in the money. Yeah, no, they're really not.
No,
They're not.
unless you have a movie deal,
Hmm.
unless you've got a movie deal,
Yeah.
they pretty much aren't. I've known quite a few authors that have been New York Times bestsellers that have went
Mhm.
from making six figures to having to get day jobs.
Yep.
So,
And the
and
whole idea is that they publish one book a year, and that's that book's only you only sell X number of copies. That's all that's making you. So that's you're relying on that one book. You're probably not going to do very well.
yeah, one book will definitely not sustain you forever.
Yep.
And kind of going back to the whole you can't really retire when you're an author thing, is that there's definitely there's so many people publishing to begin with, that if you're not like publishing, I don't want to say constantly, but if you're not maintaining a regular publishing
Hmm.
schedule, you eventually get buried,
Yep.
and the income goes down. So
Yeah, it'd be kind
um,
of interesting to see what happens when George Martin and Patrick Rothfuss finally get around to publishing the new books. Because you hear we read every time something comes up about those, and you hear all the fans like, "Oh, I can't." I'm so upset that they haven't put the book out, and it's been years. And so it'd be interesting to see if they sell as good as they had before, or if they're just people have burnout and they're just like, "Nope, don't care anymore."
I think 'cause right now he's putting out Wild Cards, the Wild Card series, I believe.
Yeah.
But I definitely think when he puts out the last book in Ice Song of Ice and Fire,
Mhm.
I think it's gonna sell like tons, just because people are so pissed off at how the series ended. They're
Right.
gonna want the good
Well,
ending.
that's what I wonder, is like, because he's still got 2 more to go. So when's the Winter's book 6, and he's got, I forget what the other one was supposed to be called, but so I wonder if this one, when it comes out, is going to sell as well. If everybody's going to be waiting for the last book to come out and then go through and finish up the series. That's
I
what I'm
will.
doing. I'm not going to bother until the last book comes out. I don't want to reread that series again, so I'm just going to wait.
Yeah, that's a bad part too, is that it's been so long since the last book came
Mhm.
out that you forgot what
Yep.
happens in the books.
Yep.
So, especially for those with really horrible memories like me. But I'll still one click buy it, and I'll try to figure it out. It was funny because I started reading the series before I actually watched the
Mhm.
TV show, and there were so many characters I could not keep up with them.
Yeah.
and he names some of his characters very like similarly.
He's
So,
not as bad as Robert Jordan though in the
oh
Wheel of
really?
Time. That series I read. So this is going to date me again because the first Game of Thrones first came out back in the mid '90s. So I first read it back then, and the same with the Wheel of Time. So I actually started reading Wheel of Time when book 4 was out. So was able to read them all the way through, and then read 5, and then 6 was so long. It was such a long time between 5 and 6 that when 6 came along, I couldn't remember half the characters, and so many of them had such similar names that I just gave up. And and all the other books out. And I just haven't had a chance to go back through and finish the series as well. I just don't have time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure George R. R. Martin named a few characters like the same names. I'm pretty sure he did, but I just remember
Oh
there were
yeah, he did have a
like,
lot of them the same because there was the whole nobility and all the people. The lesser nobles would name their kids after the higher nobles.
yeah. But it was so hard for me to keep up. I actually couldn't keep up with it until I watched the show, and then I had faces to put with names. I'm like, okay, you're not this person. You're so, like all these people are different. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I read it when it first came out in paperback back in I think '96 or so, and then I read Sea of Storms, and I actually read the first couple of chapters and I didn't like it, so I put it down. And I never read the rest of the series until the show came out, and I think it was book 5 came out, and then I reread the rest of it and got caught up.
yeah, I don't remember when I started. I kind of do. I think I was like 24 when I started reading it. So that was. I'm not gonna say how long ago that was. It was a while ago though. but yeah, it was definitely a confusing read for me when I first started it. But any book that does not introduce characters to me slowly, I'm probably gonna have a hard time grasping. But that's just me. I mean, clearly everybody else got it, um, because it was popular enough to be made into a show. But yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if it actually was. Its popularity came about after the show. I mean, it was
did it?
always, yeah, it was always a good series, but it wasn't as big as it is now until after the show. So I think it was just one of those things that the showrunners found and thought they could develop a good show out of it, and then it started really becoming popular.
Hmm.
I mean, sure, it was a good series because I did read a couple of the books before the show came out, but it just wouldn't it didn't remind it didn't to me it didn't seem like it was that popular until the show came out.
Yeah, I had not even heard about it before the show came out, but I was not reading like a ton of fantasy at the time. But but yeah, I mean, I like that they stuck pretty close to the books for the I want to say the
Until the
first.
show outpaced the books.
Yeah, well, I mean, even before that, I think by the second season they started going off a little bit.
Yeah.
But but yeah, how would you feel if they made your books into a show?
Oh God. Um, I love it. And if they, I know everybody you always see the fans getting upset when they adapt the books and this wasn't a good adaptation. They chop out a lot of stuff. I'm would be okay. I think from with most of that because just the idea of seeing my stuff be converted into a TV show would be enough that if they wanted to chop out some of the extra scenes that went afraid I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not like super story relevant, it's
Yeah.
probably not that big of a deal to cut. I know there are definitely some side quests in my books that I'd be like, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
You don't need to have
Yeah.
that.
Pretty much. They could take a lot of the stuff and shorten it up a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've been hanging out for about an hour,
Yeah.
so we're gonna go ahead and say goodnight for tonight. Again, this is
Fun.
Troy Osgood, author of the Sky Realms Online series. Is there anything else you want to say to everybody before we cut out?
Thanks for reading.
Yes.
I
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for reading.
Yeah.
Definitely check out his books. I'm gonna have links. I'm gonna try to edit this post later to have a link to your Patreon and your author page on Amazon so people can check out your
Yeah.
books. But anyway, guys, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.